Good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to call this special board meeting to order. We have all trustees present except for Trustee Chin. She's out of the country, not able to attend. And with that, I'm looking for an approval of the agenda. Trustee Cook, Trustee Nelson, all those in support. Question on the agenda, Trustee Burgess.
Question on attendance. Do we need to have an approved absence? I would move that
Not
approved
that I'm aware.
absence. Okay.
We have regrets. Trustees can give regrets, just under that new, whatever it's called, right? Would you like to read the land acknowledgement for me? I forgot all about it. Okay, the director is going to help us out tonight by presenting the land acknowledgement.
Thank you. We acknowledge that we are on the land and surrounded by water, originally inhabited by indigenous peoples who have traveled this area since time immemorial. This territory within the lands honored by the Wampum Treaties, agreements between the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, Lenni Lenape, and the allied nations to peacefully share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes. Specifically, we would like to acknowledge the presence of the Three Fires Confederacy, Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi, and the Huron-Wendat peoples. We are dedicated to honoring Indigenous history and culture while remaining committed to moving forward respectfully with all First Nations, Inuit, and Métis.
Thank you very much. The first item of new business is the draft audited financial statements for the year ended August 31st, 2024. Do I have someone who'd like to put this on the floor? Trustee Leclerc, Trustee Cook, and I could speak briefly to the recommendation. The financial statements were presented at the audit committee meeting. We went through them with the external auditors. We asked our questions, we got our answers, and we were pleased again that the audit went smoothly. No high risk concerns at this time. So I would hope that that the trustees would approve the report so that we can get it off to the ministry, because there's a deadline coming up that we have to meet. But I know that Superintendent Armstrong would answer any questions that you might have. I've already asked mine at the committee meeting.
Thank you. I'd like to speak very briefly to the financial statements. So the financial statements that are provided to you are for the fiscal year ending August 31st, 2024. The financial statements have been audited by KPMG, who will also be signing an unqualified independent auditor's report. The auditors identified no uncorrected or corrected misstatements, nor significant deficiencies in internal controls. As mentioned by the chair, these statements have been reviewed and approved by the audit committee. The financial statements are consolidated, and they reflect the proportionate consolidation of the board's share of the assets, liabilities, revenues, and expenses of the Windsor-Essex Student Transportation Services. There is a memo that is included in your package, which highlights the key financial statement variances in comparison to the prior year. I also want to draw your attention to the following. For financial statement purposes, the consolidated statement of operations and accumulated surplus, which is on page 17, reflects an in-year deficit of $653,970. The deficit for ministry compliance purposes, the deficit is that the board has reported in year is $5,341,750, because the calculation is different. This is improved from the projected budget deficit that was reported at revised estimates of $8,920,025, but still the in-year actual deficit exceeds 1% of the board's operating allocation. The deficit for ministry compliance purposes differs from the financial statement deficit due to adjustments of the in-year impacts for committed capital and school budgets. The difference in the actual deficit for ministry compliance purposes of 5.3 million versus the 8.9 million that was projected at revised estimates is due to two primary factors. There were in-year savings in supplies, services, fees, and staff development because administration implemented purchasing freezes in the latter part of the year as a result of the deficit that we were projecting. That resulted in savings of 1.19 million. We also realized higher interest income due to cash management strategies and an increase in the prime rate. And our interest income increased by $1.5 million over our revised estimate projection. What's really important to note here is that neither of these two factors is sustainable over the long term, and that the board must continue to focus on its cost reduction strategies for long-term financial sustainability. A memo on the 23-24 ministry reporting and the variances to revised estimates will be provided to trustees in January. Additional information I would like to point out related to the financial statements includes the consolidation of the financial results of OSB will now be done at a ministry level as per Ontario Regulation 350/24. So we are very pleased with that outcome. There were 5 properties that were sold in the year, and that resulted in proceeds of disposition of $9 million being deferred for future capital projects. Note 6, which is on page 30, outlines the temporary borrowing of $20 million that the board incurred and was repaid in October of 2024. Note 20 on page 46 outlines that the financial statements do not reflect any liabilities associated with any claims or legal proceedings, as the final outcome cannot be predicted with any degree of certainty. Note 24 on page 49 describes future public sector accounting standards, which will become effective in the upcoming fiscal year. And lastly, note 25 on page 51 provides the readers of the financial statements with the disclosure information with respect to the monetary resolution of Bill 124 between the Crown and various education sector unions. And before I wrap up, I really do want to express my sincere appreciation to Mr. Mayhew, who is sitting in the second row, along with Ms. Malash and the entire finance team, because their work is outstanding, not just in working through this year-end process, but throughout the entire year. And I'm very grateful. And between myself and Mr. Mayhew, we're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for summarizing the report that way. It was very helpful. And from the trustees as well, our appreciation to all the staff for the work that went into this. Are there questions from the trustees about the audit? I know you all read it. Okay, then all those in support of the recommendation to approve? Any opposed? Don't see any. Thank you very much. That's been passed. I appreciate that. A lot of work. The next item, E2, is the resignation of Trustee Sipkar. As you all know, we received an email from Trustee Sipkar, and I'm looking for someone to put the motion on the floor. Trustee Burgess, Trustee Cook, to accept the resignation effective November 5th was the day that we got the email. Are there any questions about receiving and approving the resignation?
It's effective today.
Yeah.
It goes to the board.
Yeah, so today it becomes official, the day that we receive it at a board meeting. So, okay, all those in support? That's carried, thank you. I did send Trustee Sipkar a message showing appreciation for her services. Next is the big item that we have to discuss is on how to fill the trustee vacancy. We have 90 days starting today, which would take us up to February 16th. There is a recommendation that it be filled by appointment through an application process because we don't have any money to pay for a by-election, quite frankly. Moved by Trustee Leclerc and supported by Trustee Cook, the recommendation to fill by appointment through an application process. On the motion, questions? On the motion. Trustee Armstrong?
Actually, I don't think it's on the motion. It's on the process that we would
Oh.
be voting for. So I think it's out of. Oh, is that okay? Because someone has already asked me about this. Would the application be posted online? Is it just your standard run of the mill and a cover letter? Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, so I think I sent all the trustees the information on the process that was last used by the board, and it was we had assistance from our lawyer at the time, Brian Nolan, through Shibley Wrighton on vetting the process and putting all the documents together. So I sent those to you. And of course, they were the documents from 2009. So there are some spots where we need to make some decisions on timelines. And yeah, I think that was the only thing. But I mean, the process is open for discussion. It's not a done deal. It's what we used previously. So if someone wants to create a different application process, we're open to discussing that tonight. So we're taking questions, yes, on the process. Trustee Burgess, then Trustee McKinley.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Since it's on the floor, it's for discussion and debate, not just questions. So
Yes,
I do,
it is.
I do like the idea of having it by an application process. I suppose I wanted to know where the recommendation came from, since we do have three options. We have the option to go back to the electoral roll, and there's been no discussion about that whatsoever, either in a private email or in anything else. And generally before, when we've done it, we've had the discussion to actually select the method. But I'm good with it because this is what I would have voted for. But just a note on the process. And the last time, of course, that we did it wasn't by application. It was by an appointment from interested parties because it was just before an election. And there was discussion about that, and in 2009.
Just to clarify, Trustee Burgess, I said the last time we used an application process
Yep.
was 2009. Okay?
Right.
So 2014 was different.
2014 was different.
Yeah.
And as I was going to say, the last time that we filled a vacancy, it was by appointment, but not by application. And that was because it was right before an election. But in 2014 and in 2009, at both times we discussed, because of the timing in proximity to the last election and the next election, the perception or the reality of developing an incumbency. And so I know the last one, which was by appointment and not application, we amongst ourselves in 2014 decided that we didn't want to establish an incumbency 4 months out. And so it was by interested parties, and we decided they were very highly recommended and had CVs and all the rest. In 2009, because of the timing, we had a different discussion, and the pros and cons about the perception of incumbency is really, we're right at the middle point. So you could argue either way. So why I'm happy with this process is because it doesn't necessarily go to the electoral rolls. Two years back is enough time to look at the list, but also those folks can put in an application. And 2 years of active service in the role is enough to actually establish an incumbency on their own merit. And it's not something that because somebody just knows the name, they actually have a chance to perform. So I like that. The thing that I didn't want to do, and I want to make sure that it follows through, because we changed our process midstream one time, where it was open as per the policy, because we all run at large, to everyone in the entire district. And I prefer that. One of the things I appreciate is when a trustee comes on board and realizes that decisions are made on a district level, that we have to look at all of the items on our agenda from a district perspective. And so I would like it to be open to like everybody
It
in a
is.
regular election. Right.
It is, yeah.
And there was a time where the application process started that way, but we shortlisted down to something different. And I'm going to just go on record saying I don't want to consider that kind of criteria. I would want to look at all applications that came in from across the district. Also, I noticed that one of the criteria was that you had to be a Canadian citizen, and I don't know how we ever checked for some of the criteria that is listed in regulation.
It comes through the declaration.
Through the
It's a
declaration, so it's a
self-declared,
trusting system
yes.
through declaration. Okay. So I support this recommendation, and those are my comments, that it's open to everyone in the district, and that nobody gets shortlisted in any other way. Thanks.
Thank you, Trustee McKinley.
Yeah, I just want to clarify, we keep mentioning application, but my recollection was that there was also an interview
Yes,
to go with
that's
the
part of the
application.
process.
So it's not,
in the documents I sent.
it's not like, okay.
Yeah.
But for the general public
Yeah.
that are watching.
I was going to go through the documents.
Great,
Yeah,
thank you,
to
that's
help.
all.
Yeah. Trustee Leclerc?
Yeah, I'll be succinct. I support the application process in this replacement for Trustee Sipkar, simply because we are midway through. And I do think the application process is appropriate, especially since it's grounded in legal advice, that it's the appropriate process, not just the application, but the process that you're about to outline. I support because it has been vetted legally.
So I thought it would be helpful if I went through quickly the material that I sent you from 2009, and I can point out where we need to fill in some dates. So the first page, this is a call for applications. Eligible candidates are invited to apply. This is posted on our website, or will be once it gets approved. The eligibility criteria are, just quickly, you have to be 18 years of age, Canadian citizen, resident in the region of the school board, designated public school elector, and not disqualified by any other legislation. And then there are some documents that they're required to fill out, and the applications get sent to the director's office. And there is the first blank, signed applications must be received no later than, we need to determine how long we're going to leave this open. And then selected qualified candidates will be invited to the interview process. So there was another form called application process to fill trustee vacancy. It was an information sheet for trustees that just kind of said what I just said, but this is directed to trustees. Candidates are not required to reside within the wards, the specific wards, but they must live within the district of the school board. And again, this repeats the application deadline, which we need to determine, and it does have a note that that the school board will confirm the residency address through MPAC. Then there is a declaration. It's the same declaration that we sign when we run as candidates in the election. So it's the declaration, which has to be signed by a commissioner for taking affidavits, is that I, so-and-so, an applicant for the office of public school trustee for the certain wards, declare that I am presently legally qualified or would be presently legally qualified if I were not a member of the Legislative Assembly of Ontario, on and on, to be appointed or elected and to hold the office for which I am seeking, and I make this solemn declaration, conscientiously believing it to be true and knowing that it is of the same force and effect as if made under oath. And then there's a contact information sheet where the applicant would fill out their information and their consent to release information. Because my understanding is that all the candidates' information gets posted on our website, I believe. I don't know if we had a website in 2009, but
We did.
we did, okay. Because it does say that the notice of application form will be posted on the website. However, we will not release contact information without authorization. That's this form. Then we ask the applicants to fill out, to create an essay, 1,000-word essay on why they feel they should be the successful candidate. And that must be submitted with the application where they outline their commitment to public education. Then we have a frequently asked questions section for the applicants, like who can be a candidate, what is the process, where can I find the application form. It's going to be on the website. What is the deadline? Well, we have to figure that out. Who is disqualified from holding an office, and it explains the legislation that would disqualify you. And then, and when will the individual take office? That's another date that we would have to put in. And then a question about the honorarium, and where can I get more information about being a school board trustee. So that's the Q&A part for candidates. And then there's a sheet on the guidelines for candidates about, you have to fill in all the forms, and you'll be assigned, if you're selected for an interview, you'll be assigned a spot on the interview schedule. At the interview, you have 5 minutes to make a presentation. Candidates are asked to arrive and go to the cafeteria. I'm not going to read all of this, but and then guidelines for the meeting, and that they'll get interviewed. Questions can only be asked for clarification. And then trustees will vote by secret ballot. And we have a process for voting, so that's about all. So this was, I did forward all this to you prior to tonight, and there, just to clarify, from the legal advice in 2009, our process is sound. The one thing that was pointed out was that if this is used again moving forward, we might want to include what the process would be if trustees choose to shortlist, because, I mean, we could have 40 applications, we could have 400. I mean, this is the first time we've dealt with a 2-year vacancy, so I would assume that the number will be high. And so the advice was that at that time we didn't set up criteria for how we would shortlist, but we did shortlist as a group, but just that we would add that into our last page that I read, guidelines for the meeting. And I thought that the first point should probably be trustees may determine a short list of applicants to be interviewed. Something that simple. And then when we would meet, we would discuss how we're going to do that. And the other advice was that this is like a personnel process, or this is a personnel process. So those kind of decisions when we meet and review the applications would be done in private session. And the interviews would be held in private session. And that that the advice was, because it did come up when we asked the advice about if they had to be from those wards, and it was like, no, the Ed Act is open to the district, and that the advice was that we not narrow the criteria to apply. But then when we decide on how we want to shortlist, that's open for discussion. guess there was a question that came up after the fact, and to look at the process, and Mr. Nolan responded that the board had followed a solid process in 2009, and that it is a personnel process, and the board could shortlist. Those were the highlights of the 2009 legal advice. Trustee Leclerc?
So can I provide some advice in terms of dates and stuff like that?
Sure, that's
Okay,
open
so
for discussion.
I'm going to recommend this, that once, so the application should be open for 21 days from the date of posting.
Are you going to get us into the holidays?
21 days, they have 21 days to get to post, to have the posting done, right? So
So it'll go out in a couple days, and you're saying 21 days from there?
to submit your application. Okay, so yeah, it doesn't matter if it gets us into the holidays. It'll be time stamped if they're sending in electronically, right? They're sending in electronically, so it'll be time stamped. 21 days is 3 weeks. Gives applicants 3 weeks.
Counting the days.
Yeah, and then a meeting be held as soon as practicable after the 21 days to have the board members. Where does it put us? Okay.
Are you counting weekends and holidays? That makes a difference. In the 90 days,
You
holidays
count,
and
no,
weekends
21
are
days,
included.
21 days inclusive of all days, because electronic email can be sent any day.
Okay, so if this is, say, the director's office can get this done in the next 48 hours.
Yep.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. It brings us to December 12th.
Okay, so that's fine. And then we set a meeting as soon as practicable after the 21 days to approach and vet to a short list. Once a short list is established, then the vetting of addresses, elector, etc., can take place. And if anybody's ruled out that way from the short list, anybody who remains after the vetting would be brought in for an interview in the new year.
I'm thinking. I think we should check with the director too on the workload that's going to be impacted by this. I think that's pretty quick.
We are at the will of the board.
Smart answer. Trustee McKinley?
Yes, I would like to move that the date be December 21st. Then the work can be done after the winter break into January. They'll start the processing of all the applications, etc. So my suggestion would be a motion for December 21st to be the cutoff date for receiving all applications. And if I have a seconder, then maybe we can.
December 21st. That sounds reasonable.
That's a Saturday.
Well, then
Okay.
the Friday, I don't care.
Yeah.
Make it the 20th, but
Okay. So they come in by December 20th, then nothing's going to happen until January 6th.
Right.
Correct? And that's when they'll
Yeah.
vet them, and then we'll set. Okay, January 1, 2, 3. I think that might work a little bit better.
December 20th.
Is that okay? Or I don't know.
Well, so I respectfully disagree,
Okay.
because if the December 10th date is in play, that gives plenty of time before the actual Christmas break to pull together the application packages for trustees to review. That's
Can I
essentially,
support the motion so at least we know we're discussing the actual motion?
Okay. Let me just do this. So Trustee Leclerc made a
she did.
friendly recommendation. They want to make a motion. So Trustee McKinley is making a motion for December 20th, and it's supported by Trustee Burgess.
I just want to make clear, I thought I heard you say you put a motion for
She
it.
did.
Okay.
She did.
So I just wanted, before discussion happened, just
She
to,
did.
so that we know.
And
Thank you.
Trustee Leclerc said he wanted to make a recommendation on a motion.
No,
No.
I said I respectfully disagree with the date because the 21st essentially puts us into a situation where nothing is going to happen until early New Year. Whereas if the deadline is December 10th, there's time for the packages of applicants to be put together before the holidays. And correct me if I'm wrong, Madam Director, and that gives trustees time to review if we have a lot of applications or whatever during the holiday break. As trustees, we have the time to review all those applications. Essentially, what administration would be doing for us between December 10th and the holiday break is pulling together the package for each trustee of who the applicants are. We would then have the break to review, and then we can call a meeting first week of January to do a short list. The next responsibility, from my perspective, would be that administration would only need to do the vetting of those that we bring down to the short list. And if we don't get anything till January 6th or the first week of January, then we're left with a position of having to set a meeting for a week later because we have to have time to review. And then we have to come up with a short list. And then we have to interview. So you're backloading everything. And what is our deadline? So, yeah, so you're really, really backloading. So I think this gives a balanced approach. Anyways, that's my thoughts. So if I could, I would prefer the December 10th date as opposed to December 21st.
We do have a motion. The motion is for December 20th to be the deadline. So on that motion, did Trustee Cook, did you have your hand up? I wasn't sure. No. Trustee Burgess?
The nature of debate, you get persuaded. I would like somebody in place in this position, ideally with a magic wand before the organizational meeting. That's not going to happen. Because my question before the motion went on the floor was, how does this impact our organizational choices? When we organize ourselves and put ourselves on committees, we're working with 9 and we will have 10 eventually. So there will have to be an adjustment and there might have to be something else afterwards, but that will have to be some kind of sequela. So I like the idea of having at least the long list before the break, because I do want to have somebody in place by the January 21st meeting. And
I'm confused. You won't have it before the break.
No,
It's
you'll have the
December
list.
20th.
you'll have the list.
No, you won't. December 20th is
Okay,
the
on the motion, I have been persuaded by a discussion.
So you're
I am
speaking
against the motion because
that-
I have been persuaded by
Got
my
it.
colleague
Got it.
that I
Okay.
like the
I was
idea.
confused.
Okay, I supported it going on the floor. Now with some discussion, I like the idea of going into a break with a long list for us to at least look at. It gives enough time by December 12th because it's news. And I do think that we will have the thing posted within a couple of days. And I know that's a rush, but I think we will have it posted. It's going to be official, the 90 days as of starting today, but we did receive the resignation on November 5th informally, and the community does know about it, and there has been some discussion. So I honestly think that December 12th, did I hear, is adequate time. December 10th, 12th month, 10th day, is adequate time for those who are interested in order to get the materials that are going to be posted in a couple of days, fill it out, and get it in by that deadline, and for that long list to come about in that 1 week. before we go for break so that when we come back, we have adequate time starting January 6th to shortlist, interview, make a decision, and some successful candidate to actually attend the meeting of January 21st. We only have one meeting in January. We usually would have a couple others. We have some bylaw changes possibly prospectively coming. But if changes do happen, I would like to have them hit the ground running as fast as we can. Otherwise, we're there in February, and then we have another break in March. It just gets them, I think, off to a good start.
Okay. The motion is for December 20th. On the motion, Trustee Leclerc for the second time.
Yeah, so I was gonna, through you, Madam Chair, wondering if the mover would like to amend their request from the 20th to the 10th, or if she would be prepared to withdraw the motion so I could make the motion on the 10th. But I'm through you, Madam Chair, to the mover.
To the mover.
We can just vote on it.
Yep,
If it
that's
fails,
fine.
he can bring another motion
That's
with
fine.
a different date. I'm fine with
That's
that.
fine. Can I vote? Is there any others to speak on it? Can I call the vote? All those in support of December 20th? One. Motion's failed. New motion, Trustee Leclerc.
So my motion would be that the deadline for applications be December 10th, and that we would ask that administration provide us a long list in advance of the Christmas break. So then Madam Chair could take appropriate steps to set up meetings. So the motion would be that the deadline for application would be December 10th.
Seconded by Trustee Cook. Would anyone like to speak on the motion? And that's something you could manage. Yep. Okay, then. All those in support of December 10th? Oh, it's unanimous. Thank you very much. The vote has carried. The deadline for applications will be December 10th. Trustee McKinley?
Yeah, just a little clarification, I guess, on the written piece of 1,000 words. Is that a hard, fast 1,000 words, or could it be, I would suggest between 500 to 1,000, because it's kind of vague, so I would suggest that it be up to a maximum, so that's already the max. Okay. I just didn't want that. Our expectation is some of their written statements are much longer than others, and then be comparing them based on how long they were versus, okay. That's all. I just want clarification on that wording, so I'm fine with that.
Just to clarify that the application deadline is 12 noon. Is that okay? Okay. That's okay by consensus. 12 noon on December 10th. Trustee Burgess?
It's really a point for information. At a recent meeting of the Policy Development Work Group, we had speakers from the Association of the Municipal Clerks and Treasurers of Ontario, and they talked about how the upcoming election, they're looking at different things about actually posting public contact information, addresses, etc., specifically speaking to the fairly large kind of bit of incivility and vandalism and targeting of certain trustees of having their residences. So proof of being within the district can happen, but maybe not publicly. And they're looking at things like that right now as part of their policy before adjusting anything. So I bring that forward because you mentioned it, and that's it.
I mentioned that it would be helpful if we could include in the guidelines for the meeting that trustees may determine a short list of applicants to be interviewed. So what's the feeling on that? Trustee Leclerc?
Absolutely. I think we have to reserve the opportunity to limit the number of people we're going to interview, because if we get 400 applications,
Right.
we'll be doing this until the next election. Yeah, I don't know that we have to say we're going to interview X number of people. I
No.
think we look at the applications and the board collectively decide whether or not they wish to move the applicant into the next phase or not.
So would you make a motion that we add that statement under the guidelines for the meeting? Do you need anything more specific, or is
No,
that gonna cover
I
it?
think it's open to the trustees to make that determination. So yeah, I would move that statement be added to the process if I have a seconder.
Trustee Cook? So the motion is that we add the statement, trustees may determine a short list of applicants to be interviewed. Discussion on that? No? Okay. All those in support? Okay, that's carried unanimously. Thank you. I think some of this information goes on to actually state dates for the interviews and dates for the effective date that they take term of office, but I don't think we're there yet tonight to do that. So I would suggest that we not set those dates at this time.
Madam Chair.
Prior to February 16th.
Pardon? Yeah, yes, we're going to put prior to February 16th, wherever we have to have that date. Okay, how's that? That work? Okay. Oh, okay. Trustee Buckler has just joined our meeting. Welcome. That's okay. I know that you did email that you were at work and you weren't sure how quickly you could get here. Okay. I don't think there's anything else. Am I missing anything, Melissa? No. No. Okay. So deadline will close, applications will close at noon on December 10th. And the rest of the process will take place prior to February 16th to be determined. Okay? Have we covered it all? Okay. All right. Then having reached the end of our agenda, someone move it in second, the main motion? We did? Okay. All those in support of filling the appointment through the application process? All those in support? Any opposed? None. That's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. That's the end of our special meeting agenda. I'd like to thank everybody for their time this afternoon, and the trustees will be having a workshop on bylaws beginning at 5 o'clock. Thank you very much.